This tutorial takes you through a demonstration of how to debrief a Mind Dynamics individual profile report. You will have experienced this when you had your own profile done, but you were most likely so preoccupied with learning about yourself that I doubt you were really observing the process. When you're required to start doing a profile exercise yourself, this will be a particularly useful reference point for you. As much as I'm demonstrating how the report is structured to guide you and your client through the process, please take note of how important it is to practice this online exposure and scrolling technique to ensure that your client remains connected with you throughout the debriefing. I'm using an actual profile for this demonstration, so I will begin after the leader page to protect confidentiality. My final point before I begin is that even though the report has been designed for simplicity, comprehension and flow, the real power of the instrument is reliant on your capability and talent as an accredited practitioner to bring these insights to life and make it relevant to your client's authentic and individual situation. I've jumped into a point in the report on the second page already, obviously for confidentiality purposes. The beauty of the Mind Dynamics profile report is that it's your script. It guides you as the practitioner through the most ideal manner of exposing this to your client. Overall, we take a positive psychology approach. So everything is talking about the experts. It's from a positive perspective, because already there's going to be a great deal of anxiety on the part of the client. You can imagine this is the first time that you're being exposed to your brain. So for many, many clients, you will find that there is a degree of anxiety, and what you want to do is remove that as early on in the process as possible. So the report begins with a summation of what we're aiming for. And we talk about the Mind Dynamics integrated profile. What is the integrated profile? Well, as it states here, we are interested in your expert zone profile and what happens to you under stress. Because if you understand your expertise and you understand why under extreme stress you respond in a certain way, well, that's already good news in terms of how you generally manage yourself, your life, and your goals. So this is the one time when we do expose the entire model in full, because we're trying to explain that as nature prescribes, when an individual has a choice between two features, two aspects, nature prescribes that one will dominate above the other. So this dominance is what would have been indicated or answered in the questionnaire that they completed. So of course, it's a good idea to allow them to reflect and comment on what the experience of that questionnaire was. It's a very different experience to many psychographic profiles that your clients may have completed. So looking at this, we explain, well, this would be the ideal situation. Where there are 7 pairs of variables, if we had access to all 14, then in a way, we could imagine ourselves sitting at a control center, and depending on what life presents to us in that moment, in that time, on that day, we can access any of these experts, 6 of them that sit in our brain, in our control center, experts that indicate and resemble the way we take in information, receive stimulus for what we see and what we hear, in how we express ourselves in both the written and spoken style of word, and then, of course, how we take action through that foot, how we implement our lives and express ourselves. So giving them an overview of that, we can question them. Are you aware? Do you have perception that you are particularly good, that you see detail, that you execute in a certain manner? Allow them to reflect, because we want to familiarize them
and put them at ease. This is not a judgment. It's not a sentence. It's a remarkable insight to something that every individual is born with, that started formulation at the time of conception. So we then move on into introducing the individual to their experts. Isn't this exciting? Be sure not to expose the entire model to them at the outset. There's already so much that their brains are racing to absorb. And if you expose them to the entire model, I guarantee you that you're going to lose their attention and their focus. So we begin by talking about their particular brain. I like to refer to this as the control center. An analogy that we often use is one of a computer. So this is the operating system. What is your dominance? And while you're going through this, you will share with them some of the highlights, the sales features of this particular dominance. So what are the strengths of a bottom brain dominance? What about this overall left or right brain dominance? This is an area that many of your clients, coachees, will have heard of, read of. Some may know quite a lot of detail about that. What about back or front of brain dominance? So in your notes, in the training, you will see there are many areas where there are features, and including in the report, I may add, highlights of what that expert delivers for them. Once again, allow them to reflect. So based on the thumbnail sketch that you've painted for them, does this resonate? Does it feel like that is their operating system? Are there any observations that they have? Of course, bear in mind, if they were back of brain, they'd feel a little bit pressured to express their opinions straight away because they like to incubate and think about ideas. But isn't this marvelous? You're already at the start in this first engagement, understanding the profile of the individual that you're speaking to and what their preferences are. So you can adjust the way that you present this report in keeping with their experts. Next, we move on to how they take in information, because obviously the brain is in the ultimate protective chamber, the cranium, and it's reliant on the human owner to feed in information so that it can make sense of the world out there and how it should be instructing you on how to respond. So what are the main features of that right eye in this case, right eye dominance and right ear dominance? For convenience sake, all of the elements that are aligned to the left brain dominance are color-coded blue, and vice versa for all the elements aligned to the right hemisphere of the brain dominance. In this particular client's case, they have a left-hand dominance, and I would go over all of the features of that creative expression, liking to paint a picture, talking about integrating color, storylines, bigger picture into the manner of expression. And finally, we share with your client the manner in which they prefer to implement and execute with all of those features. So once again, you've gone into the detail at the end of each of these three stages, the brain, inputs, and outputs. We've given them time to comment and reflect. In the next area of the report, you will see what I referred to earlier, in that we summarize some of the key features of each of these experts. What you should do is encourage your client to reflect on these out of curiosity. Emphasize that everyone is absolutely unique. So the reason we don't go through these lists in detail in the debriefing is because no one is a list. You have had unique life experiences. You conceived some of this expertise at the time of inception, your own life, your environment, your social experiences. All of these things may well have influenced the final model, your final expertise, your final response to stress mechanisms. So prior to the debriefing, you will have had a look at these. it'll give you some indicators, and with time, you'll become extremely familiar with a lot of these aspects. So as I say, excuse me for scrolling through. One can get rather giddy. There's a lot of information, but don't take up too much of your time in the personal debriefing. Encourage them to consider these features. So we have that as the backdrop. Now we are moving into a sad aspect of modern day living. Everyone experiences stress. And this is a good moment to pause and let your client explain what their response mechanism to stress is. What do they notice about themselves? How do they respond to stress? Is there any aspect of the way that they perform that they've observed, that they've wondered, what is it? Why do I respond like this in a stressful situation? We can then show them the entire model, because what we're trying to explain here is the concept that all of your experts that are not aligned to the dominant hemisphere of your brain, because remember, the brain is in this protective cranium, even under extreme stress, the combination, the modeling of your brain dominance does not change. However, any of the other experts that exist, those other 8, all of those that are not aligned to the dominant hemisphere of the brain may power down under extreme stress for different people to different degrees. It's not that you lose that expert, it's that it has lost some of its performance capability. Once again, we allow them to reflect. So, does this make more sense for you? Do you now better understand what the impact of stress based on your profile is? We then take a second look at all of this wonderful information. We talk about pulling it all together. And for convenience sake, we're now going to present this information in a dashboard style. You can use an analogy of an aircraft flying, of a motor car, of a pressure gauge. We first reinterpret all of the skills into when the person is in flow. You will be introduced to the concepts of flow. There's some wonderful videos from Melody that really bring the concept of flow into account. But this is obviously from a mind dynamics, neuroscientific, neurological approach. When you're in flow, your client has these experts in play. I like to draw an analogy and say to them, so if you have to sell yourself, if you were a computer sitting on a shelf and there were specific sales features, these are the sales features that are guaranteed to deliver. So what happens when you're then moving into stress? We shift into the amber zone. The reason we look at amber is because this is a caution. Slow down, take a look, be aware that as you're entering those negative environments that impact on you, these are the experts you had that may start powering down, not lost, but powering down. And then as life has it, we sometimes top over into extreme stress. And what are the obstacles in that situation that you need to overcome? What is the greatest penalty for having experienced that? You will find that in the majority of reports, these are pretty common for all individuals. We are, after all human. So now we're at a point in the debriefing where you've had the opportunity to reflect, to discuss with the clients, and hopefully identify a couple of goals. So what are the experts they would like to bring into play? What is it that they would like to prevent from happening during extreme stress? And of course, the good news is that the Mind Dynamics Profile instrument is not just about accruing better self-understanding. We're actually able to move you forward. Movement and moving forward is an essential component of this instrument. Mind Dynamics uniquely has access to something called mind moves, exercises for the brain. And Mind Dynamix makes use of 16 of these mind moves. We've given them user-friendly names, most of which, things like antenna adjuster or bilateral march or a neck flexor, are pretty self-explanatory. All of them, however, have been interpreted into a practical day-to-day application. So let me zoom out here for a moment and just demonstrate something with regards to this chart. So here we have 16 of the mind moves, and we've interpreted those mind moves of what would happen when these are stimulated and you have that particular neural pathway established in support of developing an expert. What is the purpose of those experts? Well, it's very practical. Things like listening skills, memory, multitasking, people management. So the beauty of this report is that you can brief in a coaching experience simply on the results of this report and using mind moves in terms of where you want to shift the client from where they are now to where they would like to be. In the report itself, all of the mind moves are explained with a little illustration. Here you see one of them, as well as what the purpose of the mind move is and how to do the mind move. What we recommend is that you, as the practitioner, don't choose more than 3 mind moves. And the whole point of providing these shaded gray areas, that the mind moves have benefit for more than one application. So if you choose them correctly, just with 2 mind moves themselves, you can address a whole lot of expertise that your client may be wishing to develop. So having taken your client through this reflective exercise, having discussed the potential of the development that can take place, what we recommend is that you choose simply 2 or 3 mind moves, which after the debriefing session, when you email them the full report, you can include links, video links to those specific mind moves that we'll be providing to you. So not everyone prefers to read, some prefer to watch, and those videos are designed to help your client embrace just how easy and simple these mind moves are for them. From here on in, you have your wonderful brief. You have got the material to encourage your client to try a few of these 6-pack exercises for the brain. After all, as the great Aristotle advocated, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence is not an act, it's a habit. And hopefully this will be the start of wonderful, constructive new habits for your client. Enjoy the journey.